Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. The case that I'm going to look into today is the suspicious circumstances, or not suspicious. It really depends on how you look at it, but the death of 7-year-old Adrianna Hutto, who was a little girl from America. And let me just say, this case will leave you like, you're either going to be, well, I would say 3 ways. So there's either you agree with the sentencing, you don't agree with sentences, or you just don't know, because I would definitely say that there is a fine line between it, and I don't know. It is very, very split down the middle, this case, and there are a lot of people that believe guilty. There are a lot of people that believe innocent, or I guess you just don't know which one. Whichever one you think, I want to know in the comments below. You know, I want it to be very interactive. I would love to know your thoughts on it, because this case is just, it's just one of those where I just would love to hear your input as well. This case was suggested by Shadow, so thank you very much for that. I appreciate any suggestions you have, and I hadn't heard of this one, so I found it very interesting. If you guys have any more cases, let me know. I'll look into them for you. I'd just like to let you know, I mean no disrespect to anyone that I talk about. I've just got this information from the internet to compile into a video for educational purposes. So this case happened in 2007 in Esto, Florida, which is a very, very small town. I believe the population was about 300. So again, not many people live there. The family that we're going to follow that was involved in this case was Amanda, 27 years old, who was the mother. She was called Amanda Lewis, sorry, and was a nursing assistant who often worked late night shifts. She also had 2 children from separate fathers, so that would make them step siblings. She had AJ, a son AJ, who was 6 years old, and Adrianna, who was her daughter, who was 7 years old. Adrianna Elaine Hutto was born on the 16th of September in 1999. She was diagnosed with ADHD from a very young age, and she was known as a wild child, which I don't know if any of you know much about ADHD. You know, the child involved could be very hyperactive, they can be full of energy, they can be, you know, a bit of a handful sometimes. And that probably is where the wild child comes from. She was also described as being a very social girl, very outgoing, and just was generally, you know, always really happy. Her mother did say that she had a hard time bonding with her. I believe she went away for some time, you know, spending some time in the army, and when she came back, she really did struggle to reconnect with her, but that was supposedly getting better. She did struggle with her daughter being really hyper all the time and things like that, and apparently on one occasion, Adrianna had taken a permanent marker and like scribbled all over a car, and she was heard saying, "I just want to kill her." A lot of parents say things like that they don't mean. It's just phrasing. Well, normally it's just phrasing. And, you know, people say a lot of stuff they don't mean all the time. It doesn't mean they're actually gonna do it. AJ, on the other hand, was like the complete polar opposite to her. He was very shy, he was very calm, and just generally like so quiet. On the morning of the 8th of August in 2007, Amanda, after getting off a night shift, came home, and she was just basically taking a nap whilst the children were, you know, watching cartoons, because she just done a night shift. She needed a sleep. So she was there like dozing off and having a bit of a kip while the kids were, you know, busy watching TV. All 3 of them were actually planning on going out a bit later on and buying some school supplies. So that was probably why she was having a bit of a nap before she went there. After waking up, Amanda was getting ready, and the kids asked her if they could go outside to go and play in the pool. It was one of them, you know, above ground pools. It was 18 foot wide by 4 foot deep, and the kids weren't allowed in this pool, according to Amanda, unsupervised. Like, of course, you know, it's dangerous. Kids can drown. She even took away the ladder and locked it away in the shed so that the kids couldn't get in there, because, you know, water is dangerous, and how many children drown accidentally? So that is what she did. She tried taking these precautions to make sure that her pool was safe. She told them no, they couldn't go in it. She was busy doing things in the house, and then they were, you know, they were already running kind of late, and so she had to finish these things, and then they were going out. So anyway, the kids take that at face value, and they go and decide to play outside whilst they're waiting for the mother. According to Amanda, at some point AJ comes inside and says Adrianna is in the pool. So she then apparently said to AJ, tell Adrianna to come in, and she didn't go out and check on her, which, if she was so cautious of the pool, I don't really get that, because she's now in the pool that she's not allowed to be in, and you're not going out and checking on her. But anyway, that is what happened. apparently she didn't go outside. She told AJ to tell her to come in. Wouldn't you just be rushing out there? At least you would have thought so anyway. Especially if there's no ladder. She blocks away the ladder, so any kid in there has no real way of getting out. Also, apparently it was really well known that Adrianna was terrified of water. So that just kind of makes it worse if that is the case. If she was terrified of water, that she's now in this pool. She's probably panicking because she's scared of water. And her mum just doesn't go out to help. Amanda claimed to not understand the severity of the situation at the time and thought that what AJ was saying was that she was playing around the pool and she wasn't actually in the pool. When some time passed and neither of the kids came in, Amanda goes outside to, checking on, wonder what the heck's going on. The moment she steps outside into the garden, she sees AJ trying to get Adrianna, who is lying face down in the pool, and he's trying to get her out of the pool. This 6-year-old little boy is trying to fish his 7-year-old sister out of the pool. So she runs over, she grabs her daughter, she pulls her out, and she tries to perform CPR on her while calling 911.
I need an ambulance.
What's wrong, ma'am?
My daughter fell in the pool and she's not breathing.
And she's not breathing? How old is she?
She's 7 years old.
All right, hang on just a second, ma'am.
Oh, God. Her lips are purple. What do I do? Water's just coming out of her nose. Please hurry.
She was frantic, as she would be. The police came over, and at that point they thought that Adrianna was still alive, and so they rushed her to hospital. Amanda went with her, of course, and AJ, he went with his grandmother and step-granddad because, of course, you don't want a child of 6 in that situation. You've got your daughter to be concentrating on, and if you can have your son, taken out of it and sent somewhere, it's just going to be easier all round, and especially for him as well, because it would have been traumatic trying to get his sister out of the pool. So yeah, they rush her to the hospital, and when they get there, Dr. Linda Fox is working on Adrianna, and she's explaining everything that's going on. She's explaining what they're doing, and she says to Amanda, do you have any questions for me? And Amanda says, where is the vending machine? Which is a little weird. Like, your daughter's life is at stake. She's being worked on, they're trying to save her, and you're wondering about where the vending machine was. I just found that really weird. Is that just me? I mean, it might be, but I don't know. Anyway, they try for a while, and they did say that they were able to regain a pulse for the little girl, but that didn't last long, and unfortunately at 5:05 p.m. she was pronounced as dead. Apparently, Amanda didn't show any sign of emotion when she was told that her daughter, had died. However, a lot of people who knew Amanda have backed her up on that and said that she wasn't really an emotional person. So take that, as you will. Everyone thought it was an accidental drowning, and that is exactly what it looked like. There was this red toy wagon that was found by the side of the pool, and it was full of water. They also found this plate in the pool too. Now, it was believed that she had pushed this toy wagon over to the side of the pool, stood on that, been reaching over the pool to fish bugs out of it, and then she fell in. And then she obviously drowned from that. But I don't really understand where the fear of water comes in at this, because why would she be fishing out bugs if she was terrified of water? If that was true, because, we don't know, really. Her grandmother said that she was terrified of water, so I don't know. But I just don't see why she would be fishing out bugs if she was scared of water. The pool was also 4 foot deep, so really she could have stood up in it. But kids have drowned in, really shallow water before. If they panic and if they don't know what to do, I don't know, she could have drowned. So again, it was looking like an accidental drowning until the police get a call from AJ's grandparents, and they say that he's telling them all these strange things, some alarming things that they needed to hear. Let me just note here that AJ originally sat down with an officer that didn't have any experience speaking to children, which did later raise questions about the credibility of AJ's statement, since he was believed to have apparently been developmentally delayed. So taking that into account, he had some important things to say. His version of events from what his mother said had happened were very different. So this was 4 hours after he had just seen his sister, drown. So he was probably in shock. It would have been really hard for him to process everything, to process the trauma. But this is what he said to the police.
Mama, don't sister.
What does that mean?
Drowned. Adrian was letting this and Mama holding him on her door so she wouldn't scream.
Today?
Stuff that she didn't post to, so my mom got mad at her. So she threw in
Take a seat to sit in? Which way you sit in? You sit in that way? What you got? What's that? A sheriff badge. Who threw her in the pool?
My mama.
Mama threw who in the pool?
My sister, Adrianna.
And then what happened when she threw her in the pool?
She started holding her face. So Adrianna started screaming, so I went, pow, 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 with my gun. So Mom said, stop it! So I didn't stop it, so Adrianna screamed, AJ, call the police!
You said your mom held her face? She held her face. Yeah.
So he was claiming that his mother had killed Adrianna by dunking her, which he then later classified as drowning. Dunking kind of sounds something that a kid would use, a word that maybe a kid would use. You know, dunking them. So because of this, an investigation was launched into Amanda Lewis with the thoughts that the accidental drowning theory was just all wrong. At first he was very specific, and you can kind of tell when kids are making some parts up, but for the most part his story did stay the same. When Amanda found out, you know, she said that it wasn't true. She didn't have a clue why he would make something like that up, but that he had this like really big, good imagination. She claimed that she was inside and that she went out and found Adrianna. In September, which was 1 month after Adrianna's passing, Amanda Lewis was arrested and charged with the first-degree murder of her little girl. She was asked to do a polygraph, which she agreed to, and she actually passed, with the question being, did you kill your daughter? Which, of course, you know, they're not 100% accurate, they're not admissible in trial, but, you know, they do gauge nervousness, and that was gauging that she wasn't nervous about the question. So before the trial, they spark up an investigation. They begin to look into her home life and her family life, and they find that Adrianna was somewhat of like an attention seeker. She was hyper, like all the time, and Amanda sometimes had a short temper with her, which you do. Kids, you love them to pieces, but they can be annoying, and so sometimes you can flip on them and snap and shout at them and have a short temper with them. That's just normal. So they then focus on the house. Now they go and search the house, and it's an absolute mess. It is like a shit tip. It is so gross, and it stinks like urine. So that's not a very nice place to live with your children, for starters. But the main aspect as to what they found very strange was that there were no toys in the entire house whatsoever. And that is like sometimes a sheer sign of neglect. So the police were thinking that these kids had definitely been neglected. When they asked about why there was no toys in the entire house, she had a 6-year-old and a 7-year-old. You know, they want to play with toys. They should be able to play with toys. Even if they only have a couple, say you can't afford them, you know, just one cheap little toy. There was nothing. So she just said that she had taken them away from them both as a punishment and that she locked them up in the shed. Now, I don't really understand why she would think that the police wouldn't look in there, because they did, and they found that in fact there were no toys in the shed either. Why did she lie about that? I don't know. I don't know why you'd lie about that when they could literally just go in there and look, which they did, but she lied about that. I just don't know why. Maybe she couldn't afford toys for her kids, or she didn't have any for them, and so she wanted to pretend that they were in the shed when they weren't, thinking that they wouldn't look in, but they did. I just don't know. It was very strange. There was also people came forward that said that the kids weren't always fed. Along with that and the lack of things to play with, people were just thinking neglect. Digging more into her past, police find out that when Amanda was 17, she had a son who she had named Alex. Family members said that she was an incredibly good mother to her son and she adored him. But when Alex was just a little over a year old, she kind of left. She, for a while left him in his crib. She came back to check on him and he was dead. He had died back then from what they thought was sudden seizure. But considering where they are at this point, having her second child drown in a pool, her first child died of a sudden seizure, I guess they're thinking that she may have had something to do with that too. To me, it seems like it was just a tragic incident. You get sudden death in infants and it is heartbreaking, but I don't know, because they were matching everything together. They thought maybe she had something to do with that too. I don't know. Maybe she did. Maybe she didn't. As the police were closing in on Amanda as a murderer, AJ, who by now had talked to the police multiple times, was just constantly changing his story and his version of events. As time passed, AJ spoke to specialist officers, giving them an overall similar statement to what he'd initially said, but changing a few different things each time and then sometimes contradicting himself. At one point, he claimed that he witnessed the drowning from a place that he called the garbage can tree, which was a tree in which they put the trash can next to, so that's what he called it. So he said that he saw it from there. So the police go there, they look from there to the pool, and they find that it is partially obstructed, so he couldn't see the entire pool from there. In another statement, he said that he wasn't even present when the drowning happened. So it was just changing quite a lot. But again, he's 6. He is a 6-year-old little boy, and it's really difficult because of that. It made some people believe that he was either lying because he was constantly changing his story, or that he had been coached on what to say by someone older, and he was forgetting, different aspects of it and changing them because he couldn't remember. Some family members of Amanda's do believe that is plausible. People really do question, would a little 6-year-old boy lie about that for months on end? I just don't know. But he was their strongest piece of evidence and their main witness. It's such a hard situation because you're thinking that this 6-year-old little boy is essentially deciding the fate of an adult. And is he capable at 6 years old to be able to decide the fate of an adult? I don't really think so. I don't know. What do you think? So they offer Amanda a plea bargain. They offer her 10 years in jail for a guilty plea. And she refuses. She says that she hasn't done it and she is not going to admit to something that she hasn't done. And I get it. If you haven't committed this crime, why would you admit to it? If I was accused of killing anyone, my daughter, especially, I'm not going to admit to something I've not done, even if I only get 10 years for it and, to admit it, because I didn't do it, and so I wouldn't admit it. She, as I said, she refused it and she wanted a fair trial instead. In February of 2008, that fair trial began. The media was very interested in the case, so it was heavily televised. The most sort of famous part of the just devastating trial was also captured on video too, and that was the then 7-year-old AJ's testimony. As I said, he was the prosecution's star witness, and he took the stand to testify against his mother. And just a warning before I play the clip, it is emotional and it is really, really sad to watch. Like, it's kind of heartbreaking. So yeah, just a heads up on that.
Can you tell me what a lie is?
It's not the truth.
Can you tell me what the truth is?
It's not a lie.
Initially, he didn't even think that his mother was in the room with him. He'd not seen her for 6 months at this point. So I don't know. He didn't recognize her again? I don't know.
Where is your mother?
Jill.
She's in jail.
That woman sitting right there between them. Have you ever seen her before?
Yes, sir.
Who is that?
My mother.
Now you recognize your mother?
Yes, sir.
Hey, James. Hey, James.
Yes, sir.
All right. Here. Here.
When AJ does notice his mother, he breaks down in tears. And the sight of that little boy crying on the stand just fully broke my heart. And it even made people in the courtroom break down crying too. Amanda later said that the whole situation was heartbreaking for her too, seeing her son on the stand crying his little heart out, and she wasn't allowed to go over to him. She wasn't allowed to give him a hug. And she said that she never expected him to not recognize her. Like I said, even though they'd been away for 6 months, she didn't think that he wouldn't recognize her as his mom, which I don't know. I think that's a bit weird myself as well.
You draw a picture?
Yes, sir.
Tell me, AJ, what is this right here? Who is this, or what is this?
My mama.
And what is she doing?
Killing my sister.
How is she doing that, AJ?
Putting her hand over her face.
What is this right here?
My mother's arm.
Your mother's arm?
When it came to the cross-examination by the defense attorney, once again, AJ's statements were contradictory. At some point, he claimed that Adrianna drowned outside of the pool. Then he said he couldn't remember how she drowned. At one point, he said that she was getting bugs out of the pool. But one of the most important inconsistencies with his story was that he never ever told them where he was standing when he witnessed this. But again, he was just so young, he witnessed something utterly traumatic. Whether his mother drowned her or whether she just drowned, it is traumatic regardless. And to try and kind of get that straight in a little 6-year-old's head and, I don't know, get all the pieces in place, and sometimes your mind blocks out things that are too traumatic. So it's just really, really hard. Many people do believe that the first statement that he gave was the most true, because he had literally just come from the scene. It was 4 hours later. He had been telling his grandparents all this, and then he sits down and he just comes out with it all. And at that point that he wasn't really confused or anything like that. Even though the prosecution's whole case, you know, like, was dependent on AJ, there were some other people who took the stand too, and they discussed some important things. Some of Amanda's ex-co-workers took the stand and they talked about, you know, the permanent marker incident, where she had then, after that, come to work really, really angry, and her co-workers had asked her what had happened, and she had answered, "I'm going to kill her. I can't take it anymore." Amanda, of course, claimed that that was just a figure of speech. There was one huge thing in the case, though, that really does make me question it, all of it. The medical examiner came forward, who had worked on Adrianna's case, and testified that when she conducted the autopsy, there were these marks on her face. These bruises on her face, they claimed to resemble like a handprint. When she was asked to demonstrate that in court, she made the exact same gesture that AJ had made when he was describing how his mother had put the hand over her face and dunked her under the water.
As you can see on the side of the cheek here, it lined up perfectly with this side of my left thumb. This would be the index finger where it lined up.
If you would, ma'am, just use your left hand as you would on your face, demonstrating to the jury how that would have been.
This was questioned by the defense, saying that these marks could have been made by hospital staff. But I just don't get that. I don't get how how that would happen in a hospital. Why would somebody grab a face like that if that's what those marks were? If you guys know of any reason, as to why that would happen, please do let me know, because I would love to find out. But in my own head, I can't figure out as to why anyone would grab her face like that. The hospital workers went and also took the stand, and they said that they didn't make those marks whatsoever. And even one of them said that she already had the marks when she came into the hospital. Finally, Amanda's mother, Adrianna's grandmother, Brenda Burns, testified, and she claimed that, again, her granddaughter was terrified of the water, which I've already mentioned, of course. But to a degree, this kind of put holes in the defense's theory that, like I've said, she was fishing for bugs, because why would she do that if she were terrified of water? But again, was she terrified of water? I don't know. There were claims that she was. Was she actually, though? Who knows? Amanda stuck to her story. She was innocent. She didn't drown her daughter. She was inside. Her daughter accidentally drowned, and she must have been fishing for bugs. After the facts were presented to a jury in the 4-day trial, it took less than 2 hours deliberation for them to come up with a verdict, and in that 2 hours it included their lunch breaks too, so they were pretty sure with what they were thinking. Amanda Lewis was found guilty of first-degree murder and was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. So basically she's going to be in there until she dies, which is just insane when you think about the plea deal that she denied. That plea deal was for 10 years and she said no, and now she's got life. After Amanda Lewis's conviction, there were a lot of people that thought she was innocent, that this was just a huge miscarriage of justice. And there's also a lot of people out there that still think that she did kill her daughter. I told you it was a very split case, and you'd either be one or the other, or straight down the middle. In 2010, an appeal was filed by Amanda's legal team, but it wasn't successful. It's so interesting, this case, and kind of heartbreaking when you realise that AJ was the sole reason as to why she was put in prison, because if he hadn't stepped up and come forward and said what he'd said, they would have thought it was accidental drowning, and that would have been that. There's also a lot of people who do think that AJ was not competent enough to stand trial, that she has been wrongfully convicted because of that. He was just so young, but others, firmly believe that he had no reason to lie about what he saw. Now, I just want to add in here that Adrianna's grandmother, Amanda's mother, was married to a man called Charles Burns, which was his, Adrianna's step-grandfather. And when Amanda went to hospital with Adrianna, AJ was picked up by Charles, and they drove in the car for an hour to take him to his house. Amanda actually believes that her stepfather coached AJ on what to say because she didn't have a good relationship with him. Something that was also sort of backed up by a mother who claimed that they never liked each other. Charles Burns stated that he never approved on how Amanda was raising her children and how she disciplined them, and he said she was constantly neglecting them. But despite his rocky relationship with her, which he admitted that he did have, he said he never made up the story or never coached AJ to say anything. At the end of the day, even though this case is officially solved in the eyes of the law, the big question that remains is, was Amanda Lewis guilty of drowning her 7-year-old daughter? At least beyond reasonable doubt. And you know, kids lie and make things up, but was AJ making this up? AJ was later adopted by a lovely family. He goes to school. You know, he's got a good life, but I do believe it's going to get hard for him as the older he gets and the more realization he gets that he was the reason that his mother was put in jail and the big role that he played in her sentencing. Personally, in my opinion, this kind of stuff edging me both ways. The plea deal, like, if she was guilty, why did she not just take that 10 years? Like, if she had done it, she was most likely going to get life. So the thing that would make sense would be to take the plea deal unless you didn't do it. And as I said, I wouldn't admit to something that I didn't do. Murder, no way I would admit to being guilty if I wasn't. So that to me says that she's not guilty, unless she was really thinking that she would be found not guilty. I don't know. Or unless she didn't think that she would get life. I don't know. It just is odd to me. I also think like these marks on her face tell a whole nother story. Like, I don't know, if you're pushing your daughter's face down, would it actually cause bruising or marks on the face to that extent? She's 7. How strong can she be to fully bruise like the skin? So was that caused by something else beforehand? But if there was this bruising, kind of in the shape of the hand, formed in the way that AJ said it, that kind of leads me to that she did do it. But I'm just really not sure. Personally, at least, I think I'm very much on the fence with this one. But I am kind of more leaning towards that she didn't do it. But I really want to know what you guys think. Do you think that she's innocent and has been wrongfully convicted? Or do you think that she's guilty? Should they really have put AJ forward as a credible witness at such a young age or not? Please, please, please let me know what you guys think. I would love to hear all of your thoughts, all of your theories on this case, because it just really is like such a split one. You know, if she hasn't killed her daughter, she is serving time in prison. She's an innocent woman in prison, if that is the case. I don't know. I really don't know. I hope that that isn't the case. I mean, that sounds awful to say. I don't mean it like that. If she did kill her daughter, she's serving the time she deserves. If she didn't, she's innocent and in jail for the rest of her life. And that is just awful. You know what I mean? I think you understand what I mean. I don't mean any malice by that. But yeah, that is the end of the case. Please do let me know what you guys think. I am super interested. Give me a big thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you enjoyed this video or like similar content. Just like to let you know about Patreon in case anyone's interested. Link is in the description. Anyway guys, that's all I have today on the case of Adrianna Hutto. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, bye.